Amidst market turmoil, a looming recession, and the Russia-Ukraine war, the number of global tech layoffs has been rising at an alarming rate. These layoffs are also hitting really close to home. Singaporean employees are getting axed from top tech companies such as Microsoft, Twitter, and Meta. This year alone, we have already seen 850 tech companies laying off a total of 136,000 employees so far. And this number has been rising gradually across the months. My name is Cheryl, and welcome to the Handful of Leaves podcast. And we speak to Livia today on the topic of layoffs. Livia was an ex-Meta Diversity Program Specialist and is one of the 11,000 people who were impacted by the layoffs in Meta globally. I will be speaking to her about her experience, what has she learned throughout this entire layoff journey, how can others take care of themselves in an uncertain job climate, and of course, how can you be a helping hand to friends and others experiencing a tough situation like this. Hi, Livia. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi Cheryl.
Being laid off is something that not many people are proud to have, like as a badge of honor. If you see LinkedIn, everyone is talking about how they get promoted, how they move on to their next amazing project. But when it comes to something like layoffs, it's very, very difficult. Not many people are very brave to share about it. So thanks. And I think we can speak a little bit more about your experience, especially because you experienced it firsthand. So maybe tell us, how did you find out? When did you find out that you were going to be laid off?
I actually have a couple of thoughts on this. I think LinkedIn has changed. I think this whole layoff experience has actually changed LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn used to be the place where people only share positive news and people only share, hey, I got promoted, hey, I got this new certification, etc., etc. But I actually like the fact that people are being a lot more honest on LinkedIn these days. I feel like being laid off is no longer, like you say, it's no longer a badge of shame. And I think there's a lot more transparency, and I actually really like how LinkedIn then becomes a source of support. As far as I have known, I've almost only known LinkedIn to be a positive influence. So many of my fellow friends, fellow colleagues come on LinkedIn to talk about their layoff experience, and almost immediately there's this like massive, show of support, love, people in their extended network and past colleagues coming on saying, I'm so sorry to hear this, how can I help? All of that. So yeah, I actually think LinkedIn's been actually a very, very supportive tool.
I agree. I do see a lot of encouraging posts online as well, where managers are just advocating for the good people in their team, just very happy to share, even though they're in challenging spaces. Tell us a little bit more about your experience of being laid off.
Let me be honest, right? No layoff experience is pleasant. I think let's just be honest about that. I would say that my layoff experience is maybe a little bit different from most other people's because, first of all, I sit in the recruiting team. And a lot of times recruiting tends to have an early sense for these things because we are closer to headcount growth, headcount, and of course when budgets are tight and cost cutting becomes a priority, recruiting headcount tends to be one of the first few that's put back. And so the recruiting organization will tend to know, if there's, of course, when the team is busy hiring, that's typically in a growth era, when they haven't even called it a freeze, but when hiring slows down, that something's up. So we've known that something's up for many months, right? And of course, that ties up together with the company's financial situation, which, of course, we report quarterly. But I think for the Meta layoff specifically, there was a big leak in the Wall Street Journal 4 days before it actually happened. So we woke up on a Monday morning to this big news that, to some extent, we knew that it might come. We knew that there was a high likelihood it would come. We just didn't know when, and we didn't know how deep.
And you didn't know who.
And we didn't know who for sure, right?
Yeah.
So I think when this was leaked in the Wall Street Journal that there was rumors at the time, would it be 11%, 13% of the entire account? Of course, we knew it would come to us, and And so it was a very tumultuous time. I did need Monday to myself to, just get through my own emotions.
Monday
Uh,
was the day that you heard of the leak.
yes.
Okay.
So Monday of that week, it
Mm.
was leaked in the Wall Street Journal. Then, of course, it came through on many different other news channels.
Mm.
Tuesday, Wednesday, I made it a point to go into the office, and that I think that was actually very helpful to be able to be there in person with some of my fellow colleagues and teammates. I would say that I think there's probably three big factors that affect how a person experiences layoff. Right. I think one is like how the company executes it. Two is whether your manager has prepared you, if they even can, and of course, three is how your team responds. And I think the third for me is very important because I think it helped to have people around me who didn't necessarily take a very big doom and gloom response to the whole situation, right? I think in a team where a lot of us felt, come what may, it's been a good run. So I think that was a lot of the approach that we had. And in fact, nobody really knows what's going to happen. It's a 50-50, you stay or you go. Some of us sat together and we were making, kind of semi-serious jokes about, what would you do afterwards, right?
Mm.
And I think some of us were joking about now I can go and start that business that I always wanted to do, or I can go, pursue that like property agent certification. Hey, that market's going well, or just drive Grab in the meantime while you're looking for something else. All these sorts of things. Look, like my childhood dream was to go and be a window washer.
Window washer, the ones that are like Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be belated. It's fun to look into like office windows and to tease people and to wave and surprise them in meetings. It's fun. Lots of different options. Someone always wanted to be a grocery clerk. Go to
Mm.
NTUC and help people to pack groceries, and always thought that was a fun job. Those sorts of things. So yeah, I think a little bit of humor never hurts. And I think there were some jokes about how, my card doesn't work on the printer. Does this mean my system access is locked and I'm out? All these ahead of time. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. So that helped, but I think it was definitely also big pockets of sadness for sure.
Mm.
There were teams that got together and like people were crying, people were
Mm.
hugging, people were coming in and clearing their desks. Like I'm not even kidding. I think that's to the extent that we knew that this was going to hit our organization hard. I think it was hard. I think because being in APAC, working for a US company, we may not get the news at the same time as other regions do. So it turned out that our region had to wait a full 12 hours before we were going to get our news, and that was going to come to us at 6 a.m. on Thursday.
Mm.
We were told Thursday morning, we had no idea what time, but at 6:06, I got my email, and yeah, fortunately, by the time we had set up our various respective team WhatsApp group chats, and the first emotion I felt was actually gratitude. And
Mm.
so, pretty much the moment I knew, my first text was in the group chat was, I'm out and I'm really, really grateful to have been able to work with such an amazing team.
Mm. Wait, so just to check, that gratitude is not like corporate BS, but something that you truly felt.
I'm sure that sometimes it's corporate BS.
Mm.
I think I'm blessed that at least, I think in Meta in our organization, the people that we have been able to work with are really, truly amazing. Like I could not have asked for a better team or a better manager. And and yeah, it really teams are really, really close where I
Mm.
was. And that's actually what made it hard because it really felt like disbanding a family. Honestly, I think even now, like it's been more than 30 days.
Mm.
Of course, a lot of us are still in touch, sharing job opportunities. Even now, yes, a lot of people are still looking for a job,
Mm.
even especially the ones that need it.
Yep.
And yes, I think the general sentiment is the saddest part is that we know that it will be difficult to find that kind of family feeling again finding those teammates that are so supportive of you, your work, and who are really invested in you being successful and who are so collaborative. That type of environment was very unique to the culture that we had built in our organization. And it's kudos to the leaders, but of course it makes it even harder, when so many of us are let go. I think in our organization, it was definitely the majority was let go.
I find it very beautiful because even in the lead up to the day that you got laid off itself, there have been so many different kind of emotions that were present. Even from the jokes that you were telling, some people were using maybe the like dark humor, yeah, the kind of jokes as a coping mechanism, perhaps to cope with how they're feeling. And it's complicated because first you didn't hear it from your manager, first you hear it from a leaked article, so that
Yeah.
is bound to give you a little bit of feelings as well. But what bubbled up was gratitude, and I can really see even from your eyes when you're speaking, you are just really like kind of remembering very fondly of how precious the team was, as well as how you are not able to easily find it in any other organization as well. And actually, even to this day, because I do have a lot of friends as well who were impacted by this, I see on their IGs, the colleagues continue to be the very, very strong support system for them, that they hang out with each other to go through this.
Yeah, I actually think I almost think it's a blessing that it happened en masse, because it means that we can be there for each other. Right? I think one of the first things that happened was, when we all, of course, had access to each other's contacts, a lot of WhatsApp group chats were set up. And so those actually become a very strong source of support. A lot of post events or post layoff questions and uncertainties can be clarified there.
Mm, mm,
I mentioned the three factors, right, that I guess affect a person's layoff experience. And
mm,
although I think, first of all, we are very blessed that our severance was generous, I
mm,
definitely am grateful for that. It helps, especially for those with families to feed. But of course, I think there are a lot of additional measures that will impact people who are in a less certain situation. So, for example, I am local, so
mm,
thankfully I don't have to worry about my ability to stay in the country. But I have many other friends and colleagues who are on working visas, and whether it's an employment pass or a different type of pass, then the next question is, well, how is the company able to support?
mm,
And I think, thankfully for our company, they did have government support. For instance, for an employment pass, once that's ended, you only have 30 days to find another job. I think fortunately in our situation, they will be converted to an STV, short-term visit pass, and that will actually extend another 90 days for them to be looking for a job after your last day of employment. But then the next catch is that a lot of this is happening over the Christmas period. Um,
most companies are not hiring.
most companies are not hiring towards the year end. B, this is the time when a lot of people want to go home and see their families. On a short-term visit pass, on a single entry piece, basically you can't come back. It won't be granted to you.
Mm,
So this means a lot of people have to stay in the country and, of course, prioritize your job search, right? At a time
mm,
when the market is saturated with laid off talent. It's not ideal, but, at this point, any kind of support helps.
yeah.
So then there are a lot of, logistical questions, benefits questions, a lot of those things. So again, having everyone around you helps, because then we can do things like collate questions, we can do things like share responses. So yeah, it's definitely been very, very helpful.
Mm. And I think the thing with also having a group of people in so-called a mass layoff is that it helps a little bit, I guess, in not taking things personally. For
Yes.
example, like if you're fired, then it could be very much, oh, is it because of my performance? But in this case, where you see even the top talents are also being let go, it really helps you to, I guess, cope a little bit better, knowing that this is something that is not personal to you, your identity, or your performance.
Oh, yes, definitely. The first few days were definitely the hardest. Although there are all these lists circulating for you to voluntarily put in your information, but you really only know about the people you care about by reaching out directly or by word of mouth. So that's one. But I think the second, I guess, the hard part of that is that it does become tiring. I won't deny. And I think for me, for example, I'm a borderline, on the Myers-Briggs personality test, I'm a borderline E, like extrovert, introvert, and I do get energized from the people around me, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I do have other friends and colleagues who are impacted, who honestly felt WhatsApp fatigue setting in very, very fast.
Mm.
And it does become tricky for them when everyone responds to a layoff differently.
Yeah.
um, and not everyone, first of all, there's definitely denial in a lot of cases, and not everyone is ready to share externally that yes, I was one of the many who was laid off,
Mm.
and yes, I need help,
Mm.
right? And a lot of people don't know what to say and don't know how to respond to all these very, very kind messages. Are you really, someone reaches out to you with a genuine message of, how are you? Are you okay? Are you really going to reply to them saying, no, I'm a nervous wreck. I'm like, on my floor crying because I don't know. I just lost my job. I don't know if I can keep my rent. I don't know if I can stay in the country. I don't know how I can support my family. I mean, what are you really going to say?
Yeah, because when we talk about work, it seems like it's just one aspect, but to many many people, work is the anchor for so many other things. It gives people the freedom to pursue what they are passionate about on the side. It helps with the family, paying off the bills, and for some, it's even the identity for them. It's their entire self-esteem that is built around it. So definitely, I can understand when you mention everybody takes it differently, and it hits home very very differently as well for every single person. Just out of curiosity as well, where do you place work in your life, and how does it tie in with your personal identity?
Oh, Cheryl, deep question. Okay, I'm going to have to think about this one.
Mm.
I think it's a huge part of, really, I think not just my own, but a lot of other people's identities.
Mm.
Frankly speaking, a lot of us spend at least 9 hours at work, right?
Mm.
If we're in a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I think work going well has a very, very big bearing on, your own overall mental wellness, mental health, and I guess your overall happiness as well. Um, I've noticed myself that when things go well at work, I'm actually better equipped to deal with it's just the difficult things that life will throw at you,
Mm.
right? Family changes, family struggles, or things that, for instance, friends needing support, all of that. I'm in a better position to be there for other people as well when work is going well for me, right?
Yeah.
And on the flip side, when the work or career situation is not going well, it really becomes challenging too. So, for instance, I know that like my ex and I used to argue a lot when either one of us was unemployed, and once even both of us. That was not great.
So it almost seems like, how work goes, it's like the foundation of how you show up in other aspects of life.
Yes, I think so. And sometimes I actually think that you could see it the other way around, where your own mental state will affect how
Mm.
you view and how you respond to your job and your work. But honestly speaking, if you have a crappy boss,
Mm.
if you have unsupportive stakeholders, and you have so many obstacles being thrown at you at work, there's only some extent to which you can say, oh, let me be zen about it. Right?
Mm.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
um so I think when you have exciting challenges at work, when you are thriving, when you have good colleagues that you can work with, it really puts you in a better space, just overall in life.
But I think that is also very scary, right? Because then your happiness, or almost your balance, your zenness is very dependent on these external factors, and these external factors are always changing. So it's almost as though you're anchoring your happiness on a very unstable leaf that is constantly shaking.
What an analogy. Look, I would agree with you only now because I'm out of a job, but it's not necessarily true. There are a lot of people in very, very stable careers. I think in Mandarin, in the government, for example, here we will call it 铁饭碗, or a steel rice bowl, right? Because that's what
Mm.
people sign up for. People
Mm.
sign up for that stability. People sign up for that kind of, being part of a big organizational structure that will allow you to put food on the table no matter what happens.
But is that ever guaranteed? It's never guaranteed, right? What if there's a war that breaks out in Singapore? Or I mean, all these things you can say yes, I join it for 90% certainty, but there's always that 10% or 1% uncertainty that is bound to happen because that is just how life is, right?
Of course, and I think that's where, Bruce Lee says, "Be like water." um, but you just kind of have to go with what life throws at you, right? But I think that there are really a lot of people who conscientiously carve their career path to give themselves that certainty. And similarly, on the other side,
Mm.
you have, for instance, serial entrepreneurs who choose risk and who choose the ability to take those big bold steps all the time and make,
Mm.
big risky investments because there are big returns. Yes, you are right. We do peg a lot of our life to this big external factor of work, and that's where I actually always say, when it comes to planning your career, being conscientious about how you carve that out and how you plan your next steps. So one of the books that I actually really, really love, it's actually called Designing Your Life by two Stanford University professors. And it was something that really, really helped me because it really allows you to apply design thinking or design principles to your career. One of them is things like, being able to develop blueprints or to experiment before you really plunge into something 2 feet in. And part of that is, for instance, laying out, say, right now in your, where you are in this moment. If you were to develop three brand new 5-year plans ahead of you, what would they look like? Right? It could be continue your corporate job. It could be start this new, this new business or dream that you always wanted to pursue, or it could be, something else entirely. And I actually think this is a very, very good time, especially for those who are laid off, to really take that step back because we almost have a forced pause. And I guess what is the best way to make use of this forced pause, right? I think is to really take the chance to reevaluate, what you're going to do next and how is that going to allow you to invest in your future self.
And how has that looked for you with the 9 to 12 hours being taken away, right? Like time that you could be occupied at work. Now you just have this vortex there. So how has things changed for you, and how are you reevaluating your priorities? Or do you already know them?
First thing I did once I knew what was going to happen, was to craft for myself a 3-day plan, a 1 week. Like essentially, what do I want to achieve in the first 3 days, or the
Mm.
first 1 week, or the first month, or the first 3 months,
Mm.
right? And part of that involved of course, writing all my LinkedIn recommendations and things and all these things. But of course, part of that was also to evaluate my options. Within my first week, I wanted to know what those options could be. And within my first month, I wanted to be able to have done the research to elaborate a little further on those options. One of the big options that I'm leaning towards right now is to really take the time to go away and do my master's. And I know that a lot of people don't have that
Mm.
luxury or that option, because, of course, then pursuing your next full-time job is a big priority for a lot of people, for sure, out of necessity. Um, there are other people who
Mm.
actually might, you know,
Yep.
want to spend more time with family and then start to go into part-time options and things like that. But for me, um, I never had a concrete certification in my area of work. That means, HR and anything related. And I actually did think that this is a good time for me to pursue that, um, especially because right now the market is maybe not in a great space. So hopefully in the next 12 to 18 months, this will allow me to really give me a better grounding for my next hopefully 10 to 20 years of my career. That's one. And I think honestly this just becomes a big undertaking too, because to sit down and really evaluate all your different
Mm.
options locally, regionally, and globally, what is financially prudent and what is literally safe as a female Asian considering living abroad. Like,
Mm.
what are the safe options, and looking up, gun laws in different states and all these things. All of that comes into the picture, right?
So I feel that, what you have mentioned is seems very daunting, very overwhelming. There's so many considerations that you have to think about. You have to dig deep and ask yourself the questions, identify what your priorities are. Were there any questions that helped you immensely in your self reflection, in helping you to decide what the next steps could look like, or make things a little bit clearer now that you're in this forced pause moment in your life?
Yes. Number one, what are my new priorities? What are they going to look like? First of all, can I afford the timing? Can I afford the money to go away and to, pursue further education? What is that going to mean for my family? And how much time can I afford to be away? For example, should I pursue a full time or a part time? Right, and what is that going to mean financially? What is it going to mean for my family? Where can I do it, or where do I need to do it? Do I even have the option to do it outside of Singapore? But over and above this whole studying piece, it's been a really good time. It's allowed me to pursue different things. For example, I started rock climbing for the first time.
Wow, I didn't know you started it for the first time.
Yeah, I never have, and I could actually say yes to social activities that might, or different sort of workout options that people might have invited me on, but I never really had the time to go for. I realized that it changed the way I relate to my friends. I do now actually have time, a lot more time to spend with the people who are important to me. First of all, I'm actually in the headspace to really pay them 150% attention, because my head is not like cluttered with all the things that are pressing at work. I think this is actually a time when my family has decided that, hey, why don't we actually explore doing that renovation that we wanted to do 10 years ago and we never did?
Mm.
So maybe some of the things that we wanted to do, right, when we were really, really busy, but you just never really had the time or attention to pay to it. And now you can afford the energy.
Mm. I think from your sharing, I got 2 points, and I thought it was very, very interesting. So the first is that I really like the term that you use, forced pause, and I feel it's so crucial because a lot of times we are busy and we take pride in being busy. That can actually be a coping mechanism for us to choose the path of certainty and the path of stability.
Mm.
Sometimes what you really want, what your heart truly desires, is something that maybe is very scary, and it feels very fearful. So you just kind of push it away, and use busy as a justification or excuse to, not face it. But now that you have the forced pause, all these things come up, and you actually think about it as like, hey, it's not too bad of an idea to consider this path that I would have never ever considered. But now that you don't have anything to lose, it opens up so many more things for you.
Absolutely. Like, I know your listeners can't hear me nodding like crazy at every word. um, I think the opening up of a lot of options, I think it's actually what surprised me, because you may feel like you have a void or a vacuum to fill, and honestly, it's actually very easy to get busy doing not much. I think you choose your path right. It's sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, right? The different pieces that you kind of bring into your world, and the analogy of filling your jar with the big rocks, right? You choose carefully the big rocks that you put into your life right now, and it can actually be very, very fulfilling too.
With me is really helpful, especially when you say that there are different parts of you that are important and meaningful to you that starts to become a little bit more obvious. And why that's meaningful to me is because I think for me, I'm pretty much a very black or white person at some times. So for me, it's either you have work or you have no work. Life is great or life is shit. So it's comforting to find out that when there's no work, there's other things that will actually still make life a little bit better, and not your life is not complete shit.
Oh, oh yeah. I mean, friends, family, physical health, nutrition. You're right. Like, the forced pause, or being laid off actually forces you to realize or turn to all these other areas of your
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to share something that you reminded me of, which is there's this sutta called the Salata Sutta, which is basically meaning like the two arrows discourse. And it's very interesting. So the Buddha compared two people, right? So one who constantly reflects on the nature of impermanence, the nature of life as, something that is very impermanent, things are always changing, and one person who doesn't reflect on any of this. So both of them will get hit with one arrow because that's just the nature of life, which is the arrow of suffering, the kind of suffering that is, when you age, when you grow old, you have sickness, or just the suffering of not getting what you want, or getting the things that you want separated from you. So this is the nature of life, and both these kind of people will get the same first arrow. But the person who doesn't reflect, the person who doesn't understand that this is the way things are, they will get hit by the second arrow. And the second arrow is where, in layman term, is more like, you complain lah, you just kind of sit in your shit for a while. But like in nicer terms, it's called like sorrow. You have lamentation, you have pain. That adds on to your second level of pain. So the Buddha did share that whenever we are in these kind of situations where things don't go the way we want, reflect that these are just part of life, and sometimes we just gotta accept it. Very interestingly, I think he also did share, what are the 8 things in life that is very subject to the nature of change, the nature of like coming and going, and it's this 8 wins, which is called like gain and loss, status and disgrace, praise and blame. So when you get gain, when you get praise, you don't delight too much, and then when you have loss, you have disgrace, you have blame, that's just something that will go away too. So I just thought to share that, as I think how we naturally tend to react in all sorts of emotions, but in your case, I do see how you really, in a way, rise through it, and really see the good, see the silver lining, and allow for pockets of new things to just come up to you and surprise you in a way. Yeah.
That's so sweet of you, Cheryl. I love those analogies. And to be fair, I would say that the first thing is part of getting through the hard part is not fighting it. So absolutely yes, don't allow yourself to continue in being hit by the second arrow, to continue to like dwell on that pain. But I think part of not dwelling is actually not denying it in the first place. And I think that that's the hard part. And I think one of the very, very important parts of, grief, because frankly speaking, this really is like mass trauma. you know, it's like literally news delivered overnight in a very typically an email that even if it's written as nicely as possible, is still a difficult email to receive, right? Um, I think maybe especially in Asia, one of the things that we tend to do is to hide or to deny our emotions.
Yeah.
And I actually saw that in a lot of the responses that I got from people, right? Which was, "How are you? I hope you're okay. Here is a job opportunity. Send a link." But I realized that I think one of my first big emotional releases was when I received a message, actually from someone who was still in the company, and who
Mm.
was feeling immense guilt. And her
Mm.
message to me was, "Hey, I saw from the system that your profile's been deactivated. This is
Mm.
so upsetting. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. This should not happen to you. She gushed on and on about our partnership, how she enjoyed working with me. Yes, but of course, how she felt. And then I think it was her ability to name the way she felt about the whole situation really had an impact on me that I was very surprised by. Her feeling and being able to name her emotions actually allowed me to look at that and actually say, hey, you know what? She's right. And I'm upset too. And I'm frustrated too. And I'm angry too. And it's bittersweet and
Mm.
all the rest of it. And that was the very first time I cried. And that was, I think, 3 or 4 days later. I feel like that release was important. Being able to see that for yourself and to not deny, the complexity of what you're going through was actually for me an important part that enabled me then to move on from what you call the shithole, like the
Yeah.
cesspool
Yeah.
of negative emotions, right? So yes, I think for a lot of people it's confusing. I think for a lot of us, like I said, the hard part is first identifying what you're going through, and
Yeah.
then yes, not letting it become a pity party,
Mm.
and embracing, the opportunity and the silver lining for sure, right?
Mm.
But I think part of that also involves looking at it face on, and not saying, oh, I can't afford to feel all the negative emotions because,
Mm.
I should only focus on being productive, or like you said, right, being busy in a different way.
Or being grateful only.
Yeah, or being grateful only, because that becomes toxic positivity. That's also
Yeah,
not great.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, and then, like you said, all the eight elements are true of the human condition, right? And
Mm.
it's not healthy to be stuck only in the negative portion, but it also isn't healthy to be stuck only in, all the positive parts of things, because that's not
Mm.
who we are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's not the nature of life if you only pretend to see the bright side. You have to embrace both the dark and the bright side. And that makes you a full-fledged human lah.
It also allows you to be honest with yourself, and that's honestly difficult. So I actually appreciate when, sometimes I meet with, some of us who are laid off, right? Some
Mm.
people operate better in a group, some people operate better one to one. I think the hard part is really knowing what you need now. Honestly, I think those who need support are not only the ones who are laid off, but even the ones who are not impacted. First of all, there's so much uncertainty for my colleagues who are left behind. So many people have left. A lot of times, even leaders have left. Suddenly, you don't know who you're reporting to. You don't know what's the new division of work, right?
Yeah.
A
Some
lot of
have no managers too. Yeah.
Yeah, some have no managers or skip levels. You don't know what's going to happen to the org. A lot of times,
Mm.
restructuring follows, and you don't know what the new responsibilities will be. Towards the year end, we don't know how to do our 2023 planning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of uncertainty for the ones left behind. But like, I'm actually curious to hear from you. Like, for you, and so many people in the industry around you who have been laid off. Like, how does that make you feel?
I definitely do feel the anxiety at the back of my head, like subconsciously. But at the same time, I feel that I have things to do right now, and I will just put my attention there because this is something that is way out of my control. If it happens, it will happen. If it doesn't happen, maybe it will happen a couple of years later. Who knows, right? Like layoffs are part of just the working life. And even if it's not layoff, maybe you get fired or whatever. Any kind of worst case scenarios could always happen.
Let's hope not.
So I think I've just resorted to just not wanting to put my time and effort into thinking about it because one is anxiety inducing for me and I don't
Oh yeah.
cope very well with a lot of anxiety. And second, I do have my hands quite busy with a lot of things at work, so I will just take it one step at a time. Yeah, and I do definitely resonate with having colleagues who are open and talking about this as well. It helps you to feel less alone, and it helps you feel like we are in this together. If we are in trouble, we are kind of in trouble together. Like a bunch of like naughty kids getting punished together. It feels a little bit better. Yeah. So yeah, that's my experience. I don't know, maybe 1 year later I talk to you, I'll be like, what? I can't imagine I was a recruiter.
Ooh.
Who knows, right? Yeah.
And you'll be telling me you're in a much better place now, doing whatever you're doing. No,
Hey,
actually.
please don't throw shade. Some of my colleagues listen to this. Kidding, kidding. I love all my colleagues.
Oh no, but you're absolutely right. Like, there's no point dwelling on something that is uncertain. You know,
Yep.
there's no point being unnecessarily anxious or worrying about it unnecessarily, right?
Mm.
That being said, if I think back to before we even knew about the layoff, one of the things that was helpful for me was to just have a backup plan in place. Like
Mm.
I said, the recruiting organization tends to have a lot of foresight into to what might come. And so
Mm.
literally it became sort of dinner table, lunch table talk, right? Which was,
Mm.
hey, if this happens, what will you do? Like you, I was, of course, no, hopefully not like you, but up until the very last day, I too was super, super busy. Um,
Mm.
and I think one of the things that helped me to focus 100% and to continue to give my full time attention and energy at work was to know that in the back of my plan, I have a backup plan that I'm very happy with and that I can put in place at any moment.
Mm.
Of course, things have changed and my backup plan isn't the same now.
Mm.
At that point, what I thought would be my backup plan
Yeah.
was to literally give myself a very well deserved break. Go off to
Mm.
one of my favorite Southeast Asian countries and go hike, go to a different temple every day, and
Mm.
go trek
Sounds
water.
like Thailand already.
Yeah, yeah, you know me too well. Of course, my initial plan involved like weeks and weeks of doing this in my own little like zen hiding hole. What has actually happened, of course, has transpired very differently, but that is still part of like my travel plans in January. But yeah, I think just having that plan that made me comfortable and emotionally happy, and it was something that I could think of or even semi look forward to, gave me that peace of mind. And of course, the next thing that I could look forward to was, hey, you know what? If all goes well, this is what will happen. This is my work plan. After I'm busy with like this big event, then these are all the new programs and initiatives I can focus on. Getting stuck into like planning, this is what I can look forward to at work in the following year. All of that. So if you give yourself kind of two bright paths you can look forward to, right? Whether you're laid off or whether you're not laid off, right? It doesn't matter what happens, then you have something to look forward to.
That's actually very important because I tend to just avoid it and not think about it and just like hope it doesn't happen. So yeah, I think it's good to anchor and build some sort of certainty almost when I have like at least a rough plan of the two best and worst case scenarios. Yeah, so that's good advice. Thanks for sharing because I think this is also probably very relevant for everyone. I mean, it's just not great times for a lot of different industries for everyone who's facing a potential layoff or have fears that they may be laid off soon. For all the listeners, thank you for listening to the end of our podcast today with Livia. And thank you so much, Livia, for coming out and sharing your personal experience, your stories, your learnings. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Livia, feel free to reach out to her LinkedIn. We'll put in a link at the bottom. And if you like the podcast, give us a 5-star review and may you stay happy and wise. Thank you.